and we're talking about lamination today because I'll never shut up about it. Recently, somebody asked me in my channel on Instagram. The second I said it, it sounded so weird coming out of my mouth. I digress. They were asking about how to tell when the hairs are done during step one. So I know this is something that is really tricky, and a lot of the times we rely solely on our lamination system's recommendation, the company. Like what did they say for each hair type? All our job is to decipher a hair type, right? And then we're good. Wrong. Recently, I've always been somebody who just observes the hair, or maybe I've adapted. I don't know. I feel like I have always been doing that, but I guess I check if I'm switching systems or using one that I haven't used in a minute. I'll check, and I keep those cards on hand because I do like the recommendations, and sometimes what you do for step one versus step two is different. So I always like to have that fresh in my brain. And I noticed I'm curious if maybe I did at one point and just have completely switched how I do it now, but I do not follow what they say. So we have a visual aid today. So if you are following along or really want to understand this information, I'm going to do my best to explain it, via audio, but there is going to be a video version on Spotify as well as YouTube. So if you want to see the visual aid, that's where you can find it. Let's get into just the differences and how we break down timings in general. So we know that we put hair types into a specific category. We have thin, medium, thick, coarse, whatever you want to call that. Both, basically. And then you also need to counter in another factor, which is, have they been chemically treated before? And that usually knocks off some time as well, because the hairs are, previously treated and not virgin hairs as far as the chemical treatment goes. The other thing we need to counter in is the science of it. So you know me, I'm a total science nerd. I am an ingredient nerd, and I really truly want to understand what's going on in the hair structure, which I think is, once I learned that and did a lot of research in that, what I was doing, and I think it made me observe in a different way, like what was happening, while I understood what was going on in a deeper level. And that is breaking down disulfide bonds, which we already know. But what does that mean? So think of it like you step on and climb on in the ladder. Those are the disulfide bonds. So we're removing the rungs, and we just have the two sides of the ladder left over. And that's what we're doing in step one. Step two, we're essentially replacing those rungs. So you're putting them back in that new shape. In the most simplest form. And when the hair is processing during step one, we want to know when those rungs have all been removed. So we already know that if we're over processing, though, the hair is going to look like when you're using ribbons in gift wrapping, and those thin ones, and you use like a pair of scissors to stretch it out, and it shrinks back into like a coily little cute bundle of ribbons. That's essentially like what I think of when I think of an overprocessed hair. That those two rungs or whatever, we've gone beyond removing the rungs of the ladder, and we've now started damaging the walls or the sides of the ladder. We're now damaging further, and the hair is kind of like shrinking back in on itself. And you notice just more movement in the hair itself rather than just like those straight, hairs that we naturally see when they're healthy hairs. So that's over processing. So how do we get from not processed to before we get to, that sweet spot? This is my visual aid. It is a silicone straw. This is our hair. So hair naturally has some give to it, right? We have a little bit of flexibility. If we didn't, say this was a regular plastic straw, not a silicone straw, if it were to bend, it's going to snap. So that is something that you are going to see in a damaged hair, or you will see it in a hair that's been somebody who like overused a bond builder. Like Olaplex or K18. If you overuse a bond builder, you're going to over repair the bonds. You're going to make that hair too stiff, and then any movement or give, instead of allowing, flexibility within that hair, it's just going to snap. So we want our hairs to not do that, obviously, but I don't think that we run the risk of snapping, or, obviously we're not overbuilding bonds because we're removing them in step 1, but I don't think we're running the risk of snapping. I think overstretching and damaging is more so the risk. So if we think about the hairs when we lay them onto the skin, they lift up. I'm like way far from my mic, I'm sorry. When we lay the hairs down on the skin with the lamination solution of step 1, after we've properly prepped them, they kind of still lift. You can see the hairs, especially the ones that are more stubborn, kind of fighting you. They're popping through the solution. They're raising the saran wrap if you're using a solution that requires saran wrap. You can see, if you look kind of parallel to their face, you can see a little bit of a rise there. So as the hair is processed, you're going to see that decrease. You're going to see it flatten and flatten and flatten until they are completely flattened. They're going to look like a lot thinner. I'm trying to like pinch this. See that we've essentially removed those bonds. We've deflated the hair by removing those rungs. So what you're looking for as far as texture goes is more of that slick to the surface. You're not seeing anything pop up, and you're seeing almost a flattening of the individual hairs themselves. They're not going to look as cylindrical. I don't know if I said that right. Moving on. They're not going to look as, you're not going to see that round hair structure or follicle like you normally, or shaft that you're normally used to seeing. It's going to look more flattened, like I was showing with the straw. That's going to be your telltale sign. You can also see color change, lightening, anything that's going to open the cuticle of that hair shaft, it runs the risk of lightening. So we run the risk of lightening the hairs during the opening portion with our prep a little bit, and then even more so when we put on our step 1, no matter what the activating or opener solution is. Ammonia would be the one in like a ammonia thioglycate solution. I'm completely blanking on like a cysteine, but they have those extra HCl, hydrochloride. I think that's correct. Go listen to my other lamination one. I have it all broken down. I had to have a script during that podcast because I wanted to make sure that I got all the different chemical names right. Anyways, all of our step 1 systems have the chemical that breaks down the disulfide bonds, and then there's another chemical that helps open the cuticle, allowing those chemicals to penetrate. So those that open the cuticle can cause lightening. So that's another like visual sign that we can see that the cuticle is open and the disulfide bonds are starting to break down. You see that flattening, you see that slickness where it's really laying against the hairs. Is all how you're going to tell that those hairs are processed. So what I noticed with different lines is they have all of these recommendations. These recommendations are based off, an array of testing and, a bunch of different differences, and their delivery systems and the chemicals and the percentages and all of that runs the reasoning behind it. But everybody's treatment room setting, like temperature, humidity, all of these different things, the client's skin, their hair type, all of these come into play. So I feel like it's so much more important to be observant and understand the differences that the hairs look like as you're processing, and then you're not entirely reliant on, oh my god, the hairs look like they're fully processed, but I look over at my timer and technically it says that I need to leave it on for 2 more minutes before it's done, or it's not going to be done. Well, you're going to leave it on for 2 more minutes and you run the risk of over-processing their hair. Personally, I don't think that's worth it. I'd rather pull it off. And I have talked to so many different people and really skilled and very talented brow artists, and laminators, and I personally would rather run the risk of the lamination looking lackluster and telling the client, like, if they have any issues, if I'm concerned about that, like, if you have any issues of it not lifting or not quite looking right, you reach out. I'm totally happy to do, a deduct it or give you a free lamination when you're ready so that we can fix it. Give me another a try, an attempt at it. I was concerned about your hair health. I wanted to make sure that I didn't cause any damage to your hair. That was my utmost concern. If your results are not where they're at, we can try again. I just wanted to err on the side of caution. Nobody's going to argue with that because you're choosing their hair health over like burning their hair off. I know I would not be mad about that at all. I would be like, thank you. That's wonderful. Hopefully this works. If not, I will see you in 7 or 8 weeks when I'm able to come back again. I think it's so much more important that we think about the science and understanding what's really happening, knowing that we're breaking down disulfide bonds, knowing that that is what holds up the hair and kind of gives it to its structure. So obviously when we remove those, it's going to look flattened, it's going to look different, it's not going to look the same as it does when we're done with step 2 and we've replaced those bonds. They're going to kind of plump back up and lift a little bit and look more like themselves. And that's why I feel like you're like, it looked so good during step 1. It was so slick to the skin. And then I neutralized them and I put the other product on and they don't look quite as flat. Yeah, because you replace the disulfide bonds. If they remain super flat like that, you run the risk of them being damaged or, whatever the issue is. And you can still achieve like a really slicked look. I recently started doing a ceramide treatment during my laminations and I feel like chef's kiss. It looks so good. But I am introducing more vitamins and retaining hair health in order to get that more slicked look and more laminated longer or whatever. I'm not leaving it on longer just in the hopes that it looks more slick or flat or whatever. Also, if your client wants them like stuck in a fixed position, super slick to their skin, then like tell them to get laminated and then tell them to use a brow soap on top of it. Like there's ways that they can still get that look without you having to run the risk of over processing, because that's never worth it. They're going to be pissed, they're going to be upset, they're going to deal with damage, you're going to lose out on money. It's just not worth it. I'm so that type of artist, and I think if you have open communication with your clients, that relationship is super duper possible and doable, and it builds a lot of trust and a lot of back and forth communication. They're more likely to come back to you, and they're a lot less likely to talk shit about you or leave you a bad review or do whatever people do when they're upset and distraught about something. Not saying they're in the wrong, I totally understand, but it is something that happens, and I'm somebody who wants to err on the side of caution. Now, there are other things that I touched on briefly that can affect the timing, and that is going to be something that we can use to our benefit. So something like not prepping the brows properly, like not giving them a good cleanse, not removing makeup, oil, buildup, whatever, skincare products, sunscreen, anything like that, is going to be essentially a barrier. We have to open the cuticle up in order to let that product in and allow it to do its job. But if there's other things on top of that cuticle, like the buildup and all the things that I just talked about, then there's even more in the way of that solution penetrating. So we need to make sure that we're removing all those things. But like I said, we can also use that to our benefit. How can we use that? We can use it for a sensitive clients or people with thin brows that you might be concerned about time and anything like that. So for somebody with compromised skin, but not so much so that it's obviously a contraindication. If it's contraindication, sorry, let's try something else. But if you're feeling like they're okay, but you're a little concerned and you just want to add an extra layer, you can put barrier bombs on. I personally use Vaseline. I think it's really affordable. Works great. You can also use, I know Tuya sells one. I'm sure there's a lot more brands that sell them now. And they're all, I don't have a preference. I just think Vaseline's very cost effective and it works for me and my clients. So I use that, and I can use that to protect the skin around the brow, but you could also use it on top of the brow hairs if you're concerned and you want to add a little bit more of a barrier. Almost like using a glue bomb for a lash lift instead of traditional glue, since it has that oil concentration in it versus water-based like a traditional glue. Like it adds a little bit more to it, so you have to process a little bit longer. same kind of deal. So if you're nervous or something about that and you want to give yourself a little more time to work the brows without running the risk of damaging, you could use a barrier balm. So another way that your timing card or whatever it is that comes from the company would not be able to help you, because it wouldn't be quite as reliable as being observant, checking the skin and hairs, watching them as they process, and visually seeing that change. We talked about over processing and how it can look kinked and coiled. Basically, we talk about how removing the disulfide bond makes it look flattened. If you go even further than that, you're just kind of getting like shriveled up, which is so sad. It's so sad. Poor little hairs. Let's not do that. So I want to go over some updates that have recently happened just to wrap it up. That was really fun. We deep dived. Now you know what the hair looks like when it's done. It's cooked. Kalami has cooked and you ate it up. I don't know if I used that properly. Gen Zers, tell me. Okay, news and updates for the Eyebrow Goddess. I have recently decided to stop trading and doing like one-on-ones. Wild. I can't even believe that came out of my mouth just now. It's crazy. But I took a step back. I've been retrospective, and I noticed a shift and a change in the beauty world, in the educational side of the beauty world. And I just feel like with the economy where it is and people trying to grow their business and the major oversaturation in the educational world, I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to fill like voids and holes that I'm seeing in the industry. I want to help in areas that people are not able to find help. That's always been my goal from day one. That's why I love talking about my style of threading. I don't see a ton of it, so I want to teach it to everybody. I have a scientific background to how I approach lamination. That's why I like talking about it. It's a little bit different than what you hear most. And then I just love, with the podcast and then the broadcast channel I have on Instagram, I've noticed that I just like these quick back and forth answering the hot topic of the moment and the issue that you're having. And with all my knowledge, I'm able to take new trends and things like that and be like, well, no, that wouldn't work. Oh, no, I don't know about that. Oh, yeah, that's great. That looks phenomenal. That works because X, Y, and Z. So I just think moving in a direction where I can do short format content and still have it be very educational and bite-sized just sounds like more my speed and more everyone's speed. So this is kind of my little sneak peek plan for the hopefully near future. I am going to be doing a membership style for brow education. So you are going to be able to get it for $15 a month and cancel anytime. And you'll get multiple videos in a week, one live Q&A a month, and of course bonus content, because your girl loves to explain things with visual aids and loves making stuff like that. So it'll be a really cool way to get bite-sized little videos on a specific topic weekly and just build your education, have continued education at a low cost of $15 a month. And that is so much for you to consume, so much for you to stay on top of, low ticket price and not having to be worried about saving up for a ton or making a large investment. That's like the cost of an average eyebrow appointment. So I thought it was fitting. I feel like no matter where you are, that's either a half of what you're charging if you're, further along in the industry, or maybe it's your starting cost for your brow business if you just started. So you can just be like, as long as I get one on the books, that's paid for, one a month. So that's the concept. And then I also am going to be doing a little bit longer master classes with a little bit more visual aid, maybe demonstration and demos, different things like that. And those will just be hopefully around an hour to 2 hour long, quick format masterclass for a lot more affordable than a one-on-one training. So that is my plan for the Eyebrow Goddess. I'm freaking jazzed up. The second I made that post and started talking about it and I dove into it with my husband, I was like, this is what I'm thinking. And he was like, this is incredible. This is what we're doing. And I was just like instantly so fired up. I've been talking about burnout so much lately. And I'm rambling. I'm obviously getting excited. And I just am so happy to have that passion reignited in me myself, because I was feeling very lost and uninspired. So stoked to have that. Very excited for what's coming. But if you do want to learn, meet with me in person, before my trainings are completely gone, I will be in San Luis Obispo, California, with Emily of the Brow Fox at her spot, the Sweet Spot. That was cute. April 7th, 2024. Come learn from 2 experts. You'll get access to my brow manual, swag bag, kit to get your ROI. Learn all of our tips and secrets that we have learned over the years of laminating, all in one sweet fell swoop. Connect with other beauty professionals, learn brows, see demos in person. I will also be doing my hand-tied threading method. So excited. Come join us. It is going to be a blast. I will put the link in the show notes. Can't wait to see you there. And if you want to follow along with me or the podcast on social media, the podcast on Instagram is at Broweducation. I am at the.eyebrow.goddess. TikTok is the same, and you can find all of my information and more at our website, www.theeyebrowgoddess.com. So follow, like, share, subscribe, whatever, all of the things for the podcast. Share it with a brow friend who you think would enjoy it, and all of your ratings, shares, views, watches, listens mean the absolute world to me. I can't thank you enough for being here. This is something I had no idea I would love as much as I do, and the fact that you're here listening means the world to me, and I can't thank you enough. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you are listening to this, and I will see you next week.